everyone. Welcome to our brand new podcast show for the love of books, featuring Indian small press authors who bravely navigate the treacherous waters of self-publishing and marketing, even during the pandemic. I will be your host, Emma, and we're going to have a blast as we move forward to opening up America and enjoying life again in all its dimensions, because we've come a long way, baby. As Gene quoted in one of his essays, it is my pleasure to present to you author Gene Wilburn, who has co-authored with his wife, Marion, Shift Happens, Essays on Technology. Welcome, Gene.
Well, thank you very much, Emma. I'm delighted to be here.
Glad you're with us. Gene worked in IT for the Royal Ontario Museum in Toronto. What prompted you and your wife, Marion, to write this book of essays on technology?
Well, I guess I should back up just a little bit. I've been writing about technology since about 1981. So I've been writing for various computer publications, off and on for years and years now. I started thinking back across life. The way you get to be a certain age, you just start reflecting back on all the changes you've seen in a lifetime. And I realized that I had been through just about an entire history of technology just by living. And I was kind of fortunate in when I was very, very small. I was living on a farm with my mom and my grandpa and my grandma up in northern Minnesota. And there was no electricity, no running water. And yet it was a delightful home. And I saw the electrification come into their district. They used to call it rural electrification back in the day. And this was in the 50s, the early 50s, it started to come in. You wouldn't think that's not very long ago. So I was fortunate to be able to see technology grow right from the base up, because in the book that we did, the first chapter is on electricity.
Yes.
Because that's really where the new age, I think, starts. What really separates it from the 19th century and previous times is that a flick of the switch and you've got power. And once you have power, then you can do all kinds of other things with that power. And as time went on, of course, we started to see radio was already in. And everybody had a big radio set in their house, and they would listen to it. We used to listen to it in the evenings. Just things like Superman were on the radio initially, and the Lone Ranger, and things like that. They were radio plays. And then we saw television come in, and that was very exciting, because we used to walk around the neighborhood and look up at people's roofs and think, "Oh, there's an antenna. They've got a TV set." It was pretty exciting stuff back then. And then, of course, it blossomed into color TV, and that was amazing. And as a music lover, I've always been interested in collecting music of one kind or another. And the formats that music has gone through, and just even the last little while. I mean, when I grew up, it was, first of all, it was 78 RPM records. They had about 3-something minutes per side. And then that shrunk down to the 45s, and all the schoolgirls used to bring them to class. And in recess, we had the spindle. That's how they'd make their playlist. They'd put all the favorite top 10 songs on the spindle and let them drop one after another. And and then as I started to get more interested in electronics as a kid, I met some people who were into high fidelity. And high fidelity originally meant one speaker, one preamp, one amplifier, and a turntable. And they didn't have stereo LPs at the beginning. When the LP first came out, it was all mono. And then you would start to see the intrusion of stereo come in. And these are the things that we were writing about, these different phases that have shifted the way we think about things like, well, even music. And music today, for instance, what did we go through? We went through the 45s, the 33.5 LPs, which were very popular and have made a big comeback. And then the CD player and the CDs, so the pure digital sound that some audiophiles didn't like very much. but I always thought it was pretty cool. And then it got to be that streaming came in. Yes. And then these were like MP3s and M4As and files like that people still use today. And then who knows what's coming next? Because I understand there's some more new sound formats on their way. But the streaming audio has had a tremendous effect on things like the music community, because artists don't get paid very much anymore. Unless you're one of the biggest stars, if people are listening to your music on Spotify or Apple Music, the authors, the artists in this case, don't get very much of that. And when they used to have CD sales, it was better for them in a way. So these are changes that we've kind of seen and talked about through the book. And then, of course, the biggest explosion for us was when the personal computer started to come into being.
Yes.
And that was, in fact, I'll read a little about that at the end. That was one of the most exciting parts of our lives. And I've always been a computer enthusiast. So I was really excited about all this stuff. And in fact, I changed careers and got into IT. And I spent most of my career in information technology. So I have seen the industry from both the inside and the outside, in a sense. So that gave us something to write about there too. But then we started to think about all the other things that had a big shifting impact on the way we live. And there were things that don't have an immediate, say, reward or conclusion, but have the potential for all kinds of things, like the decoding of the human genome. That was a very big bit of science that took place, and its ramifications into medicine and to genealogy, for instance. Marion is a great genealogist, and she now uses genealogical DNA to help track relatives for both herself and other people. So it's that whole trend, that's expansion. I mean, I remember when the first satellite went up, and it was Russian, of course. It was called Sputnik 1.
Sputnik.
And the very first one.
Now they have vaccines called Sputnik. Seriously, they have vaccines called Sputnik.
Oh,
I know it really? From my Czech friends.
That's wonderful. And
from a satellite to a vaccine.
And we went from, the Russian, the Soviet Union at the time, put up this all it did was go beep, beep, beep. It didn't do a whole lot, but it was there.
It was progress.
It was the first one. And then they were the first man into space and things like that. But eventually the US caught up to this too. And now you start to look at the landscape, and you see that satellite technology has grown and developed so incredibly, with fixed orbit satellites all around the Earth. It gives us our sat-nav, our GPS systems for the cars. And some farmers use them. They have automated tractors that can go plow a field and know right where to do it through GPS location. And then, because I was working at the museum for many years, I got, of course, very interested in archaeology. It's impossible to work in a museum and not get interested in archaeology, I think.
I would say so.
Oh my. But archaeologists are using satellite imaging now, because some of the sensors that they have on board the satellites can penetrate through the Earth to a depth of about 6 meters or so. And that means that they can start to see outlines of cities and villages that didn't even know were there.
That's amazing.
But, both in the rainforest and on the Delta Nile in Egypt, all over the place. It's just, each one of these technological things has really kind of, well, we use the word shift because it just shifts our way of thinking about
That
things.
was my next question. If you could explain the title of the book of essays, Shift Happens. Can you explain the title?
Well, it's a takeoff on a common expression, of course.
Of course.
But it does happen, and it happens in ways that we aren't always prepared for, or that take us by surprise. I think possibly the biggest technological shift we've seen in our lifetime is the internet.
Absolutely.
Changed everything.
Absolutely.
And, you know, from its very humble beginnings for people like you and me, the military was using it for some time, but as it developed out and people like us get a chance to use it too, it has really paved the way for independent writers, independent artists, independent musicians. And
so
you know,
we're lucky. We're lucky.
Well, we have the software tools now to do it. We have the infrastructure to put it out there. And to me, this is just wonderful. I think that's just great.
To me, it's wonderful too. So how do you feel that over the past 100 years, all these technological advancements, how have they shifted our perceptions, all this technology? How has all this technology from electricity to the satellites, to DNA, how do you feel it has changed our perceptions? What would be the major change? What would be the major change?
There's different major changes, I think, at different periods. When the automobile started to come into being, it was mostly dirt roads, gravel roads.
Yes.
People lived in the city to be close to their work. And the automobile created the suburbs.
The suburbs.
So they didn't really exist much before that because there was no way to get to work if you lived way out of town. So, I mean, right away, it's remapped the whole way we look at our urban environment, for sure. And then the same thing is similar, I think, in impact, but broader for the internet itself. It's created an information highway, as it's called. It's a two-way device. As we're sitting here, you know, with our computers talking to each other miles apart. And it used to be that you couldn't even afford to call somebody long distance because they called so much. And the telephone. Now, there's another big changer.
That was a big one.
When it came in, first of all, people were starting to be able to call one another. This changed social life quite a bit. You know, people started to be able to talk to their friends, their relatives on both long distance and local. And then the telephone evolved. And pretty soon we started to get these big mobile phones with the long antenna sticking out.
Those were huge. I remember that. I remember that, a huge phone.
You see Mully and Sculder using those in the first season of the X-Files. Those big long Motorola phones.
I like the title of your chapter of that, From Socket to Pocket. I love that. That is awesome. That is very clever. Or did you steal that? Or is it?
No, I thought that one up, actually.
That is a nice one. That's a nice one.
But I mean, look at it now. I have an iPhone in my pocket that is more powerful than the computers I was using in the 1980s. And I just carry it around. And it's a telephone. It's a camera. It's a web browser. I mean, you know, I can order pizza with it. What can't you do with a cell phone? I mean, or a smartphone, particularly. And it just, we're not quite the same as we were. It was a quieter time before the internet in some ways, mentally. You might come home and you might watch TV. You might have a TV dinner. That came in with TVs.
Yes.
And then you might read a real book, you know, like a paperback book or a hardback book, and or watch a favorite TV show. But everyone back then watched the same shows because there were only 3 networks. So everybody saw Lassie, and they saw the Ed Sullivan Show with the Beatles and things like that. So there was there was a cohesiveness about it. When you went to work to the water cooler and talked about last night's TV shows, everybody had seen it. Now it's so fragmented, so dispersed. We get wonderful shows out of things like Netflix and BritBox and all the various streaming services. But it has changed the tempo of life. It has changed our expectations that we can just go flick a button and be there. It has changed. Remember, we used to wait for the summer reruns if you missed a show because there's no way to record it.
Oh, there was no way to record it. Oh.
Yeah, and see, then along came the VCR, and people started taping shows. That was new technology.
But that was a long time ago too, taping of the shows.
That's right. That's right. And now I can again, I use the iPhone example, any smartphone. I can watch these movies right on my phone if I choose to. I mean, that is remarkable convenience, and maybe it encourages to see a lot of life as kind of on-off switches. That's just an idea that just hit me right now. But
so you clearly mention in your essays the pros and the cons of each technological advancement. How did you come to these conclusions? Was it from your personal experience, through your IT career, or both? Tell us how you came to these conclusions.
Right. It starts out with autobiography, I think, where we looked at our own lives and thought about the technologies and how we interacted with them at the time, and what cultural molding those technologies had on us. And then being in IT, I was very present for a lot of the computer revolution, but it also took a lot of research. So we didn't just come up with things. Everything we thought we'd talk about had to be verified. Is this really true? Is this what we have? If what we're thinking about that are we off base? Do some of the authorities who write about these things point out the same things? And that it was a combination of research and personal experience.
Okay, on the transportation subject, it brings joy to some and anger to others, right? Depending on your character. Some people swear behind the steering wheel, angry and swearing at the other drivers. And I have a first-hand experience from my husband who does that.
Oh, I do understand that. And I think we all experience.
But as you conclude, transportation does have a stronghold on the North American psyche. So how would you describe us? You already said that we're used to getting everything at the flip of a switch. How else would you describe us? That the automobile so well catered to us, and the internet, that we literally absorbed it like a sponge, because not every culture did that. Europe was a lot slower in this. So describe us.
I don't know if there was ever horse carriage rage, but there sure is car rage, isn't there?
There sure is. And I know about it firsthand and physical, right? Not just swearing, but gestures.
What happens is we build the infrastructure, and the automobile created a tremendous amount of infrastructure in terms of road systems, freeways, and of course, city passageways. Now, you get near a city, you're going to get into traffic jams. Even small towns, some of them have a 5-minute traffic jam, but you get near the big cities, and your commute, which you might do in 45 minutes, can take you 2 hours. So one of the things that it has really put us behind the wheel for that, unless you live in the city and you have access to good public transportation, that's a little bit different. Then you can just change the pace of it a little bit, I think. I'm
just trying to think. Usually that is not the case, at least not in the USA. If you live outside of the major cities, you are 100% reliant on your automobile.
We live in a car culture. Yeah.
It becomes a necessity like food and water out in the country. We live out in the country, and you can't get anywhere without your car.
Right.
So it's just
what E.B. White once said. He says, everywhere that you want to go to, you need a car. And it's true. It's just unless you're blessed with good public transportation, you're pretty well stuck with having to use a car to get from one place to another. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. I mean, cars are kind of neat. You're in your own private space. You get to see a lot of beautiful scenery.
You get to go for a pleasure ride, for a joy ride.
and of course, the introduction of the automobile, and as road systems develop, like originally in the US, Route 66 connected LA to Chicago. Well, this was amazing. And people suddenly got curious about what the country looks like. And they started taking vacation trips to national parks and places like that that they would have never thought of doing before they owned an automobile. So it's, and then,
oh, go ahead.
Oh, and then again, then people discovered that you could pull a trailer and you get your cross-country camping trips.
You became like, you turned into a snail, right? Carrying your home on your back.
Yeah,
okay, I would like to talk about your essay From Socket to Pocket, because that is really fascinating. And you write, its impact has yet to be fully understood, though it has been appreciated by billions of users worldwide. So it seems like you have a certain hesitance about the future of the cell phone as you compare it here to Virginia Slim's cigarette. Then you've come a long way, baby. So can you explain that hesitance? What do you think is going to happen? And already the G's are very controversial. And if you could touch on that, because people are really interested in this kind of stuff.
Well, I think certainly the hesitancy I see is that people get glued to their cell phones. And during COVID, I live in a suburban neighborhood, and people have just come out of their houses. They're walking in the neighborhood. They're walking their dogs. They're with their kids. I mean, it's great from that point of view. But one after another goes by glued to a cell phone, talking the whole time. Or they have something like this with the earbuds in, and they're talking away. I mean, the first time I walked along a city street in Toronto and some guy beside me started talking out loud, very volubly to somebody, and nobody was around. I'm looking around, who is he talking to? And that was my first experience of somebody having the earbuds and the cell phone talking as they're walking down the street. Now it's very common. In fact, you can't escape it. And maybe that's the issue. What happens to the family dinner if everybody's addicted, let's say, to having their phones and texting during dinner, or talking to somebody, or watching something on their cell phone? There are aspects of it which aren't 100% healthy, I think. We need to be able to, although we use the technology, we need to be able to step away from it too.
Step away from it.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
and have some quiet time.
But also there are some concerns that, first of all, a lot of people don't know what the G stands for, including myself. I did not know what that stands for. So it stands for generation.
Generation.
I found out.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yep. That's all it is. It's just
a lot of
it's just a marker.
Think that these G's, without knowing what the G stands for, are dangerous to our health. Can you explain that to us? Why would it be dangerous to our health?
I see. Yes, we get a lot of that with the 5G, don't we?
Yes, we do.
I've been trying to understand that one for a while, and it puzzles me. Can I put it this way? In this age we're living in right today, there seem to be an abundant number of conspiracy theories running around that people get caught up in. And somehow 5G technology got caught up in this. And I heard Bill Gates was putting chips in people, and all kinds of weird stuff like that. And seem to be centered around this 5G technology. It just means faster.
That's all it means.
Faster. That's all.
That's all it means. That it's just
the signal is a
faster.
little more powerful. And
how does it get faster? How does it get faster?
I think the transmissions are probably a little stronger, and the way that data is compressed, they can put more bandwidth through, and within the phone technology itself, there's little receivers, transmitters that use radio basically.
Okay.
And that radio gets a little bit more improved with each generation of phone. And then the towers, we have the whole network of cell towers to make this all work. They upgrade, and it's just like, do you remember when you might have used a modem to connect to the internet?
No,
you might not have done that, but originally when we wanted to get on the internet, we would dial up a number and put a phone in a coupler.
In the beginning, I used that. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and that wasn't particularly fast.
That was slow, like a turtle.
And then you watch the internet grow, and pretty soon you're getting a higher speed. And now almost everybody demands to have a high-speed internet connection in the home. And I think that the cell technology just mirrors that. It's broader bandwidth, it's a little faster, just as the internet has become faster, coming into your house on a wire of some kind. It can either be a cable modem, or it might be an ADSL modem from the telephone company. And I just upgraded recently, and now I have a gigabit of internet coming in, and we use it. But
yes.
I mean, that's astonishing when we started out at 110 BPS in the early modems.
So clearly your perception is that, there is no explanation why people are afraid of the 5G.
Well, not that I understand. I can't find any truth in that myself.
Okay.
There might be things I don't know about, obviously, but I just don't see what the problem is.
Okay, wanted to make sure. Then you also write about DNA, a game changer. That's a big one. That's a big one, and it is also controversial. Very controversial.
Yes.
So
I think it will.
Go ahead.
I think it will always remain controversial because it allows geneticists to do things that we might find ethical problems with. And I don't think that's ever going to go away completely. They can, what we're looking for is some major medical breakthroughs to help treat terrible diseases like cancer and things like that. And we can sometimes use these technologies to get closer to solutions. But what happens if people say, well, would you like to have a little bit smarter baby? Or would you like your kids to be a little healthier than the other kids? Or, and you can get into all kinds of ethical boundaries with that. And they can cross species with these things too, and make things that are chimeras really. Now they do that anyway with things like fruit flies, and things that we don't have too much ethical concern for.
Right.
But if you scale this up to even pets, and then start to take a look at humans, then you begin to wonder. And of course, there's also the danger that somebody could genetically create a virus that could escape and create a pandemic. And there are various theories about how COVID got started,
including that it has escaped from the Chinese labs.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I mean, I'm not in a position to know, but it either came from things like bats or something naturally, or the epicenter of it is pretty close to where that lab is.
Where the lab is.
It makes you kind of wonder just a little bit. And I don't know if we've had the full story on that yet, but that's a case of DNA where if that happened, would be think of the devastating impact that it's had from COVID worldwide. And it is possible that it might have escaped from a lab. We don't know yet. I'm not pushing that theory by any means. I'd rather prefer to think it was a natural occurrence.
Right. But that brings us to the vaccine. Both Pfizer and Moderna are based on the RNA. So it's in the kind of same playing field. So it is also, again, we're balancing the bad and the good and the ugly.
That's right. And I think technology will always be like that. There's always a possibility of misusing it. And if there is a possibility of misusing it, it will get misused by somebody somewhere. When you look at what happened with the US pipeline, where the ransomware attack came in. Well, these are the bad hats. These are the black hats that are on the internet. And they do some pretty terrible things, like take over the system, shut it down, and demand a ransom before they'll let you rebuild it again. It's a little bit scary at times, and we balance that off against watching your favorite Netflix movie, which is fun.
Which is fun, right? So it balances out in the end.
It does. It's something we have to keep aware of and put protections into place. And it's a pity that we have to have antivirus software, but we do.
We do. We have to have it.
Just to keep those accidental infections of our systems from happening. So that's some of the ways where I see where it balances out. Well, there's some hesitation. I think we started with cell phones, but there's a certain hesitation with all technologies, I think. That there's always two sides to it,
Two sides to each story. Okay, Gene, would you like to read to us from one of your essays? Which one will you choose?
I'm going to read a passage from Personal Computers, Power to the People.
Okay,
because this is kind of fun for me, because this is kind of where we came into it all.
Okay.
And I'm going to start here with a subheading called DIY microcomputers, do-it-yourself microcomputers. And that's where I'll start reading.
Okay.
Although large mainframe computer systems have been around since the 1940s, their use was limited to computer specialists in the military, big business, and universities. The introduction of the 8-bit microprocessor chip changed all that. These 8-bit chips caught the attention of the electronics hobbyists. Early experimenters tinkered in basements and garages, assembling processors, capacitors, and resistors onto breadboards as they built the first primitive but functional microcomputers. More enterprising entrepreneurs soon developed and sold digital computer kits from their homes. Assemble-it-yourself models, such as the Altair 8800, were highly coveted by a growing base of computer enthusiasts. When Harvard students Bill Gates and Paul Allen, who were at school, read about the Altair in the January 1975 issue of Popular Electronics, they immediately foresaw a new business opportunity. The price of computer hardware was dropping to the point where selling software to run on them could become a profitable venture. With the sale of their basic computer language software for use on the Altair, Microsoft Corporation was born. Kit owners soon formed computer clubs and demonstrated their new micros as software games for applications they had written. As a result of a meeting of the Homebrew Computer Club in Menlo Park, California, Steve Wozniak was inspired to design and build the Apple I computer. And that's kind of where it started. In the late 70s and early 80s, ready-to-use 8-bit computers such as the Commodore PET, Radio Shack TRS-80, and Apple II were purchased by a new set of users, early adopters. They were attracted to the ready-to-go software for word processing, spreadsheet calculations, and database creation. Marion and I saw our first microcomputers in action at a monthly meeting of the Toronto chapter of the Special Libraries Association in late March 1981. The presenters of the evening demonstrated how they used their computers. One panelist created computer music using a MIDI interface. Another showed a program for tracking bicycle riding statistics he had written using the basic programming language. But the star of the panel was a Toronto lawyer who demonstrated two hot new programs, WordStar, an impressive word processor, and VisiCalc, the first ever spreadsheet program. But he generated the most excitement when he connected a modem to a telephone line and accessed two large commercial databases, Nexus for news and Lexis for legal research. Early in that day, US President Ronald Reagan had been shot. To our sheer astonishment, he accessed the Associated Press newswire feed, which had up-to-the-minute news about the president's condition. As we left the meeting, we looked at each other and said, we have to get one of those. We put aside our plans to purchase a VCR for recording television programs and bought a microcomputer instead, a Radio Shack TRS-80 Model 3. It was a magical time. Computer clubs formed to support like-minded individuals. As interest in microcomputers grew and more people purchased them, large-scale BBS systems appeared. A BBS is a bulletin board system. CompuServe, a fee-based North American-wide BBS, offered broader and more advanced services to the ever-growing base of computer users, whatever brand they owned. It offered full-featured topical discussion forums such as SF Lit, science fiction literature, overseen by Robert J. Sawyer, a Toronto-based science fiction writer and personal computer pioneer who later won the coveted Nebula and Hugo Awards for his writing. In addition to discussion forums, CompuServe also offered email at a time when internet mail was not widely available. It implemented an email gateway to CompuServe, to the internet, and CompuServe was later joined by rivals Prodigy and AOL, America Online. It was AOL's famous spoken alert that became the romantic comedy title, You've Got Mail, starring Tom Hanks and Meg Ryan.
Thank you, Gene.
Thank you.
Okay, before we say our parting shots, I would like to thank our sponsors, Doc Chavent and Digital Quill Services for Writers. So, Gene, what are your parting shots? What would you like to leave the listeners with? Your tremendous insights into technology.
Well, my final word would have nothing to do with technology, but just to writers everywhere, keep on writing. It's never too late.
Oh, nice, Gene, nice. And my parting shots are read indie, write indie, keep your fingers on the keyboard and your butt in the chair. Thank you, Gene. Thank you, Gene.
My pleasure.